Welcome to the LowCarbUSA podcast, where we seek to inspire you to help us build this community. I'm Doug Reynolds.
And this is Pam Devine.
So in the previous episode, we were talking with nurse practitioner Brandy Wiltermuth, and towards the end of it, we talked about a lady that's become her assistant now, who started out pretty much as a patient with her. And we were saying, or Brandy was saying that she had an amazing story. So we decided to follow that episode with one that highlights Alexis's story. So welcome, Alexiss, and just give us a little bit of background of how you got there, and then tell us your story.
Okay. Thank you, Doug. Thank you for having me. So when I met Brandy, I was really struggling personally with a relationship that was kind of going downhill. And food became kind of my comfort, and I really leaned on it hard. At that same point, I was going through school and full-time work really made it difficult to make an effort to put some thought into what I was eating. What I was putting in my mouth really came from a vending machine or from fast food. So I was really dependent on that, and it was just easy. And then it just became a horrible cycle of yo-yo dieting, trying to combat that without much effort on my part. When I finally met Brandy, she told me what a carb was, because up until that point, I really didn't know. I knew a little bit about calories, but I didn't understand what fat meant or what protein was. And she really kind of broke down the macronutrients to me. And that in itself really changed the face of food. So once I was able to learn a little bit of that, I don't want to say that I lost weight immediately, because none of it was immediate. It was a learning curve for sure. I will say that. Every day was kind of a battle, but I do remember the 30-day mark. I specifically remember on that 30-day mark saying, oh, I can do this. I can continue to live this way, eat this way, a low carb lifestyle. Whereas in every other diet that I had tried was a failure. After a week, after 2 weeks, I couldn't do it. I felt starved, and it was so difficult that I couldn't understand how anybody could do it. But with low carb and all the amazing foods that I was eating, I told myself and believed in myself that I could continue to do this. And slowly but surely, and I want to say slowly, because it did take about 1.5 years for me to lose 60 pounds. I want to say that wasn't my only accomplishment, because I did have sleep apnea, and I was diagnosed with sleep apnea because I was overweight. Because I had excess weight around my neck, I did have to use a CPAP machine for about 6 months until I had lost enough weight to get rid of the machine. So now I am CPAP free. And that's kind of the fast track of my story. But because of how Brandy helped me, because of what she taught me, it's only made me want to shout from the rooftops. Every day I want to tell people how much this has helped me, how it can help them. And sometimes I'm hesitant because I don't want them to think that I'm crazy or that I am trying to preach some gospel that's crap. I try to really follow up the low carb lifestyle, the keto lifestyle. Like, this is science-based. It's evidence-backed. I want people to know. It's so frustrating to me that people don't know what's out there, that they don't know that the literature is out there that proves that this diet is good for you. And working in the medical industry, we really fight back with other doctors who have been taught, and I don't want to say that it's completely their fault, because it's stuff that they've been told forever that is true, that they're supposed to trust from their own medical community, from the Heart Association, that this is fact. This is how you're supposed to treat people, and it's only caused so much harm. So when I did the low carb diet and I did the ketogenic diet, and it changed my life, and I saw how it changed my life, I want to say, why isn't everybody doing this? Why can't doctors get behind this? Why can't nutritionists get behind this? Working with Brandy, with other nutritionists who fought against her, a tooth and nail. Everything that she said, they disagreed with, but yet patients would come back and say, I trust what Brandy is saying because it's working. What the nutritionist said, it's not working. It hasn't worked, or it worked for a short period of time and then I gained all my weight back. And yet we have patients like me, or patients that I've helped treat, that are coming back years later, thanking us for saving their lives.
Mm-hmm.
That is probably the biggest bonus, the greatest experience for me personally, to see people change their lives and it stays good for them long term. I mean, that is awesome.
Absolutely. So you talked a little bit earlier about how you tried these other things and they weren't sustainable at all. You were hungry, miserable, all of the above. But do you feel like it was just the fact that this food is so much tastier, which is what I feel, and the fact that you're not counting calories, so you're never hungry? Do you feel it was like that in itself that was the reason that you were successful with this, or do you think that the psychological component that Brandy has incorporated into her practice had a part in it? Because I feel like there's two groups of people. There's people like me who are not addicted to carbs and sugar. I ate way too much, but when I wanted to stop and I had all this amazing food to eat, I didn't look back. But there's other people that still really struggle because they are serious food and sugar addicts, and that's something I've had to learn to understand about certain people.
I suppose that I kind of skipped right over that part, but yes, that was an important part of how I healed, is looking at the behavioral portion of why I was depending on some of these foods to make me feel better, why they made me feel good. So I did do the behavioral portion of her program, and I learned a lot about self-care, which a lot of people don't do, especially women. They tend to put other people first and put themselves last, and self-care has been incredibly important, not just in my weight loss, but my overall health, and my mental health. So how I think about myself and how I want other people to treat me. And also social interactions, which can be really difficult for people who live a low carb or ketogenic lifestyle. We're constantly, I don't want to say constantly tempted, because not everybody is tempted. But for me, if there is a jar of candy on the counter and I see it, I will eventually put my hand in that jar. I have to walk away, because it's a constant battle in my mind that I know what that tastes like. I know it tastes good. I know it's bad for me, but if it stays there, I'm going to lose that battle. So I have to move away. So yes, for a large portion of people, it is behavioral. And I am one of those people where it is a behavioral problem, where I am addicted to sugar. I am addicted to the carbs. It feels good, but I know that they're bad for me. So if they're not in sight, I have no problem. But if they're there, I will have to walk away.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
No, it totally does, and it's so you're one of those people that when I first started doing this, you would have told me, oh, I can't stick with this or whatever, and I have to put my hand in that jar, and I would have just almost like I would have had no respect for you. I would have said, that's rubbish. There's just focus on how nice this keto food is that you can eat, and you don't even think about this other stuff. And that's a huge lesson that I've learned over this over the last couple of years, maybe even only really the last year, that I'm so much more understanding of how many people struggle daily, as much, if not more, than someone that's got a smoking addiction or some other kind of drug addiction like cocaine or heroin or whatever.
It's really comparable to that. Sugar is. I mean, we have to look at it in that way. When there's studies that show that it lights up the same centers of the brain that heroin or cocaine does, we have to look at sugar as a drug. And being addicted to it is a possibility. It is a fact for most I don't want to say most people, but a lot of
A
people
lot
out
of
there
people.
are addicted to sugar.
Yeah,
And it's no fault of their own. It's just pumped into everything that we eat.
totally. And you know, I mean, now if you look at the lineups of all my events now, sort of at least in the last year and a half, there's always been at least one person that talks about sugar addiction or food addiction or something down that line. And yet, you know, in the first few, there wasn't anything like that, because I didn't. It's only more recently that I've become so strongly aware of how important it is to consider that.
Yeah, we just did an interview with Dr. Jonas Lind, who was also at LowCarbUSA, and we loved her speech so much and what she had to say, because it really struck a chord in both what we do at the clinic and what I do personally, or what I struggle with personally, and many of the people that I work with struggle with. And there's a lot of people out there. So for her to have this entire presentation on why we struggle with this was fascinating. And I want more people to listen to her.
No, they must, absolutely. And she was such an epiphany. And I mean, she followed me around at the San Francisco event because she really wanted to meet me and talk to me and encourage me to have someone like her. But obviously, she wanted me to have her. But speaking about food addiction, and I listened to her, and I mean, it totally made sense. And I was starting to come around at that point anyway. So I decided, yeah, okay, you know, next event is in West Palm Beach, so why don't you come and speak there? I think I still had a couple of openings there. And then she pitched up to come and sign in at the event. And she was like this little mousy person. And she won't mind me telling this story, because I've told it even from the stage a couple of times. But she finished checking in and she walked away, and I thought, geez, I've made a big mistake here. She's going to be terrible on the stage, you know? Man, she got up there, and you saw what she was like when she got up on the stage. It's like she flicks a switch, and she was just amazing.
I mean, people were focused in on what she had to say.
Yeah.
Totally.
So
I can see that.
Yeah. So she's spoken at a lot of our events now. She's one of our go-to people to cover this food addiction, sugar addiction thing, because she really has a way of explaining it so that people really get it.
Yeah. And that's what we do here at our practice too. In the behavioral portion, we do list those things: binge eating disorder, sugar addiction, food addiction, as the things that we treat. We want people to be aware that it is a problem. I think acknowledging that it is a problem first is the step that most people need to take, because they don't think that it's a problem. And then once they acknowledge that there is a behavioral portion to weight loss or weight management, then they get it. It's like a light bulb flicks on in their brain, like, oh, that's why I do this. And then we're better able to help them, because sometimes it's not always about the food. We have to deal with their emotional connection to food, their relationship with food, because long-term wise, if they don't deal with why they turn to food for any kind of coping mechanism, then they're not going to be successful long-term.
Yeah, no, that is so true. And I have to thank you for what you're doing, for going through your journey and committing to now try to help other people like me. When I first found this, I couldn't believe it was 51 years and I'd never heard of a ketone, and felt I needed to try to get this message out. And it's just awesome when I come across other people who are committed to do the same thing. So thank you very much for being a part of the solution. And just quickly, Brandy gave the details for your practice in that in a previous podcast, but in case someone didn't listen to that, just tell them how they can get hold of you, how they can find out more and learn about your program and maybe become a part of it.
So our practice is called 3 Health. And 3 stands for mind, body, and soul. So in case people were wondering what that means, 3 Health. And we are located near Seattle, Washington, in Edmonds. And we have a website. It's www.3, that's spelled out, THREE.health. And our website has everything that you need to know, but you always can call us You can find our podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts. It's called For Fat's Sake, which is great. We talk about keto, intermittent fasting, and the low carb lifestyle with a little bit of fun mixed in. Me and Brandy do, but the website is a great resource if people just kind of want to look into what our program offers cost wise, insurance questions, things like that. Because we are covered a little bit by insurance. So that's kind of nice for patients.
Yeah, that is very nice. So thank you very much for being with us. Thank you for taking the time to talk to me. And I wish you all the best. Hopefully we see you at another event sometime soon.
Thank you, Doug, for your time. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye. So you'll notice that we haven't had any commercials at all during this podcast, and we intend to keep it like that if we possibly can. But at the same time, the work that we're doing and the efforts that we're going to get the clinical guidelines done, there's just so much to do. And in order to really, for this to be sustainable, we need your help. And so what we're asking you to do is go and take a look at our Patreon account. There's actually quite a few options there. It provides you with options to actually go onto our site, and there's membership options there where you can get access to all our video content and other perks of being a member, or even just $1 a month. Become a patron. And you can find that in patreon.com/LowCarbUSA. I'll put it in the show notes and in the episode notes so that you can find it. And help us to change the world.
Yeah, so I think a lot of people take a look at the conference registrations, and I think they immediately assume that, from a distance, that these might be money-making endeavors that we're doing with these conferences. And it's hard to admit, and it's hard to tell people that we really aren't making any money from these. All 11 of the events that we've done have not been a profitable endeavor. We've literally had to dip into our credit, basically. It wasn't anything. It wasn't like we actually had a pocket to dip into and put money into. We've had to take loans and get a lot of credit for these events. So any little bit that you can help, every ticket that's sold, every little bit of $1 a month in a Patreon account will help us to fund our endeavors and fund the programs so that we continue to do some of these other things that are free content. The project management that we're doing on the clinical guidelines will really go a long way.